Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Hey, this place in the UK is having another guitar auction. Let's check it out. We've got day one we can look at, and then there's Gary Moore's stuff. But I'm only going to talk about day one because I didn't see any guitars, and I don't like to talk about amps and pedals much. But they're there if you're interested in owning Gary Moore history. So here's my top picks. We'll start with this 1997 Gibson Les Paul Studio. I've documented a lot of the Gibson double cuts, and at first I didn't really like them that much, but then they've kind of grown on me the more and more I've learned about them. But I bring this one up because I'm asking, has anybody ever seen an actual cherry Sunburst DC Standard? You know, the ones that look like this, that I've documented before with the whole flame top. I have a collector friend of the show who doesn't believe it exists, but yet he's still looking at it so he can pair it with his prototype that he shared with us a while back ago. And I've been looking since that video, and yeah, cherry Sunburst, exactly like this, and I've yet to find it. But one day I would like to review this studio model because it's kind of interesting. Wrap tail piece, two humbuckers. Had it been P90 pickups, that would have been a whole nother different cool thing. So I think that's why these aren't huge sellers, is because most people would rather pay just a couple $100 more to get the cool flame top. Looks like they're estimating it to be upwards of $850. I think they'll break those estimates. But after buyer's premium and everything, who knows where it'll go. Next up, they have one of the Les Paul robot guitars. I'm not going to spend too much time on these. It's just always cool to see how many of these things show up and where. It was a big deal when these things first came out. And it's because they have the whole Robo-Tune system, and many guitars followed it after that. But generally speaking, I think they're about right on their estimate there. There's a Les Paul recording model. You can check out this video if you need to learn more about it. I wanted to highlight this simply because there are some really cool Norland era oddities that are for sale in this collection. This particular recording appears to be in pretty decent shape for one of these. I like the mahogany wood grain, but the recording is the model you definitely want because it's a little bit thinner and they've got this cutaway right here. The predecessors to the recording, the personal and professional, they're a little bit chunkier. But next up, we've got a beautiful Les Paul Catalina. I want a complete set of all the Catalina colors. I think it's just such a cool, historically significant model. Outside of the Bantam and Florentines, they're technically the first chambered Les Paul that doesn't have like an F-hole trying to be something else. That later birthed the Elegance series, but they're all the solid colored finishes. You can check out this video if you want to learn more. Next, we have a Gibson Les Plus. Very confusing name, but I wanted to share this one because this top really reminds me of an 80s top. Like, it's got the very tight pinstriping. It's got the vertical wood grain going on underneath that. It even has like the same style knobs you would see, except for, okay, we've got a mini toggle here instead of what we should have. But then we've got the titanium nut here, auto tuners, all that stuff. What makes the Les Plus interesting is the fact that it's got the E-Tune system. It's 2015 specs, so the neck is going to be a little bit wider. But it's kind of like the custom lights or classic lights where it's got the swoop on the back and they're a little bit thinner. So despite the not as desirable specs, I probably would review one of those. I really like this one. Late 60s Gibson SG. Possibly an SG Junior conversion. I thought maybe we could help them. I mean, just looking at this, yeah. Doesn't have the mother of pearl logo, so it can't be a standard. We don't have binding. Now, just because it doesn't have binding doesn't mean it's not a standard when you're in the 70s, because they did have the unbound Ebony fretboards. Those are personally my favorite. But in the 60s, I mean, your options are pretty limited. Yes, this has to have been some sort of a conversion job. You can tell the pickguard doesn't fit anywhere near properly. But what's cool is you can tell that this was definitely done in like the early 70s, because you only find those in 1972, these Gibson pickups that are embossed like that. They've got two bridge pickups in there, but whatever. It's actually kind of cool. Those pickups themselves are worth quite a bit. We'll put like $800 value there. And even if this is just a modified Junior that has a bunch of parts replaced on it, I mean, it's still worth a considerable amount. So they're thinking upwards at $2,500 US. I think that's a reasonable estimate. I think it might go for more than that though. I mean, these rectangle cases can be worth up to $800 in really good shape. But it's a lefty too, so I mean that's a completely different market. We could get surprised how much that one sells for. And speaking of lefties, this auction has a whole bunch of left-handed stuff, so if you're a lefty, check it out. You might find something you like. For example, here we have a 1993 Les Paul Standard, and I mean this thing was used heavily. Black guitars age the best out of any finish in my opinion. Well, maybe Pelham Blue ages pretty cool too, but you can't beat authentically aged Ebony. They develop such a cool patina that just cannot be replicated through relicking. Somebody's modified our pickguard here with a Les Paul custom style one, but I like the choice of the black bobbins. Removing the covers really just works on this. Golden knobs to match the golden hardware, but this photo right here really sells it. That thing was played in some smoky bars. I mean, it's got a 70s Gibson case right here. I would believe that thing is from the 70s of how yellowed over the binding is. That's a cool one. But perhaps my absolute favorite thing out of this entire collection is right here. This is unbelievably cool. The modifications were done so tastefully. So this started life looking like this. It's a Gibson S1. Basically, Gibson's kind of a take on a Stratocaster. It's a bolt-on neck. They're interesting guitars. You can check out this old review and demo. But somebody did a whoopity-woo over here, so it's now a double cutaway, which if you don't know, kind of a brother model to the S1 and Marauder is the L6S. There's a very famous double cut version of that has AC/DC ties to it. So seeing a double cut over here, it kind of makes sense. But the fact that they doubled over the pickguard to be matching kind of reminds me of Kiss makeup or something. And Kiss is known for destroying the Marauders and all that other good stuff. So it works with that, but I'm just surprised we still have the original pickups here. But this must have been from that lefty guy who was buying all these, because this is a right-handed guitar converted to be a left-handed one. And somebody trying to be cheeky over here, trying to make it look original by putting Gibson on it. And you can see the routing was actually done very cleanly. Some freak put banjo tuners on it at one point in time. We've got a TP6 tailpiece in here. Now the bridge, probably not original, because generally you'd find a harmonica bridge on these. Might still be error correct. I mean, the high estimate of 900 USD. The neck's worth about 300 to 400 bucks on its own. The pickup's about the same, maybe even a little bit more if somebody's trying to restore one and they desperately needed it. The chicken head knobs are worth 50 to 100 bucks. The TP6 tailpiece, that's 100. If the knobs are original, at least 50. I mean, all the stuff adds up here. And we didn't even talk about the case. Those are pretty nice too. I would consider that a deal at 700 and I would buy it. Our next one's also kind of a freak. 1989 Les Paul custom stock with a Kahler. 89's pretty late to find a stock Kahler, but it is Gibson branded, so the odds of it being stock are very, very good. We can see we've got the HBL Bill Lawrence, the original pickups in here because of these very large screws. That's just the telltale sign of those. You only find it from late 1987 through very early 1990, and this thing's looking clean. Original pickguard still in the case. It's got the protective coating over it even. Although there was no way in any shape or form that would have came shipped directly with one of these Chainsaw 2 cases. It would have been the Gen 3. But that's a nice case. Still has the lid ribbon. Oh sweet, this one even has the shortly lived no screw tuners. They just use a metal post in the back that gets poked into the wood. Next up, we have 1978 25-50th anniversary. I just think it's cool to see one of these at auction. They made a whole boatload of these things. It was like the first anniversary Les Paul model that was pushed and people bought thinking this is gonna be collectible. There's ones that predate it, like the 20th anniversary Les Paul Customs, but they weren't really special besides the inlay and bringing the white finish into the public eye. However, 25-50, check out these videos. They are very fancy guitars. I mean, besides the obvious, you've got things like the sustain sisters inside the guitar that's supposed to help make it sustain even longer. I believe it's the first time Gibson used the coil split switch, so that's a big claim to fame for that guy. And this example is particularly nice. Nice ringy wood grain, and it's matched with a perfectly flamed 5-piece maple neck. But it was a rare treat to see a natural one in this collection. It used to be tobacco, natural. That's all that would ever show up. It was the black and red ones that were ridiculously rare. Now natural has become the hardest one to find, and the wine red and ebony have been showing up more and more often. Now, am I gonna say this is the nicest one I've ever seen? Nah, it's rather unremarkable on the back. And as far as the necks go, it's definitely not in the top tier, but still pretty nice. A great one for a player. But hold on to your socks, my friend. There's a Spotlight Special in this auction? Man, you never see these things show up here. So they've got a high estimate of about 7,200 USD, and that's pretty much where these things fall. Trust me, I know the Spotlight market in and out. I only sell them out of my personal collection if I'm being paid what I consider is absolute top dollar and a little bit beyond, because these things they're special. They're special. You have to own one. You've had to had one and played one to really understand it. To everyone else, they're just the weird faux neck through guitars, but you buy one, you become addicted, especially to the antique naturals. You can learn all about them in this review and demo. Now, what's my opinion of this one? I mean, outside of my, I must have every single Spotlight ever built mindset, honestly, I don't really like this one that much. I certainly have nicer ones in my collection, but all Spotlights have a home with me. But for those of you keeping track at home, this looks like it's number 83-160, and somebody has replaced the next to impossible to replace pearl tuner tips on this one. So it's like, I would gladly pay $5,000 for this. But any more than that, nah, not for me personally. There was an ES335, very early 1970s. It might not be the most desirable era for 335s, but I'll be darned if you can't find some really interesting wood grain patterns on the walnut finishes sometimes. I know I call this finish boring brown all the time, and when I call them boring, I say that affectionately. Boring brown, it's so fantastic. It's like the Jim James 335s. They're cool. It's a good finish, but sometimes certain ones fade in a peculiar and cool way. This one does not have the original case, but seems to have a pretty low estimate. But then that 335 evolves into this 345, so we get the introduction of our Veritone circuit here, which we just talked about in the Epiphone Lucille video. And this one also has interesting wood grain, and we get the split parallelogram inlays. Now the reason why this era of 335, 345, etc. is not all that popular is because of this right here, the trapeze tailpiece. Not everybody prefers that. It kind of makes them more similar to a 330 that's fully hollow, but this has the center block in it, so you can technically install one aftermarket if you want to. But I bet that 335 and this 345 were definitely in the same collection because they have a very similar vibe. But then check this out, 1976 Gibson limited edition Bicentennial Firebird. 1976, a big year for Gibson. The Explorer comes back. The Firebird kind of comes back in a roundabout way. I mean, they made them like the medallions before, and I don't know, it's like a random rebirth, kind of. They batched these in with the whole limited edition thing. However, I've never seen this before. On the pickguard, it's got the Gibson Norland logo. Then it says Firebird, LTD edition, limited edition. It's got your fancy American Eagle Firebird here. And these guys are saying this appears to be an extremely rare feature. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but the way I understood it is all the early ones said limited edition right here instead of Firebird. So I wonder if that was like a dealer exclusive? I don't know on that. I haven't done enough research on these. But these are kind of an interesting blend between a Firebird 1 and a Firebird 5. And the fact that you've got the regular tailpiece setup right here, you've got the two pickups, but you have the unbound dot neck. And then lastly, on the Gibson side of things, this has to be the most uncomfortable looking guitar ever. The B-52, not just kidding. No rock lobsters over here. It's the B-25-12. I mean, doesn't that just look like it's going to neck dive like crazy? You don't have any heavyweight tailpiece down here to counteract it. Just giant headstock with a million old Gibson tuners. The tiny body doesn't help it at all. Maybe the thick body makes up for it, but I don't know. Something about that one just doesn't look comfy. But seems to be very fairly priced. Then just a quick lightning round with the Fenders in groups of 4. We got a couple of older Stratocasters here. I really like that Malmsteen blue one right here. If you want to know why this fretboard looks weird, it's because Malmsteen has them scallop it, removes the wood in between. They're interesting guitars to feel. I'd say the best of this batch would probably be this. These are pretty sought after in their own right, but you can't beat a Strat Plus or Ultra. They're just great guitars. And that's one of my favorite finishes. The Aerodynes are pretty cool. We've got one of the Antigua Stratocasters over there. Looks like one of the Mexican-made variations, so it should be a little bit lighter on your budget. This one even still has the sticker over the tremolo spring. Here we've got an interesting yellow Toronado and a Squier Fender set of guitars. Oh wow, one of the old Elites. I didn't see that my first pass through because this thing caught my attention. Some custom built thing with some serious wood grain going on. Over here we've got a Union Jack Telecaster and a Deluxe Toronado. And trust me, that Lefty collector had a whole bunch of stuff. Got Strats and Tellies on this one. He's got basses and Tellies, more Tellies and Strats. I mean, all this just gets me thinking, how cool would that be if there was just a dedicated left-handed guitar shop that was big. Like, I think there is one out there. I think it's called like Southpaw Guitars or something. But I'm talking like a museum, giant, well-strung guitars type like shop. That would be so strange walking into a shop like that. It would be like how every left-handed guitar player feels walking into like a Sweetwater or something. But anyways, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.